This is the new Samsung Gear VR. It's also the old Gear VR, as the headset itself hasn't really changed since the 2016 model arrived alongside the ill-fated Galaxy Note 7. But Samsung's still back with an upgrade, pairing this old headset with a new wireless motion controller. Is this just an effort to play catch-up with Google Daydream, which launched last fall with its own wireless controller? Or is Samsung's new motion-controlled interface a real upgrade for Gear VR, inspiring a wave of immersive, entertaining new apps? I'm Stephen Shank with Phone Arena, bringing you a closer look at the new Samsung Gear VR, now with wireless motion controller.
Last year, Samsung's Gear VR picked up some pretty solid upgrades, with the debut of a new Gear VR headset featuring a wider field of view than ever before, along with interchangeable USB plugs that evolved to support the arrival of USB Type-C based phones. While Samsung's inaugural Type-C phone, the Galaxy Note 7, has now gone the way of the dodo, the new Galaxy S8 family is finally here to put that hardware to good use. The basics of the Gear VR viewer remain unchanged since we reviewed this headset last year. Just pop in your Samsung Galaxy phone, install the latest Oculus software, and you're ready to start enjoying one of the most impressive virtual reality experiences you'll find on any smartphone. And truth be told, it's even better now that the Galaxy S8 has arrived. The resolution's no higher than it was with last year's Galaxy S7, but a faster processor and new GPU means a lot less stuttering and frame rate issues during rendering. Since we've already covered the Gear VR in depth during our last review of the headset, and you should definitely check that video out if you haven't yet, this time we're focusing on what's new, the Gear VR wireless motion-sensitive controller. The controller very much reminds us of what Google introduced for its own Daydream VR system. You've got a couple hardware buttons for navigation, a volume rocker to control audio output, and a clicky touchpad for interacting with VR apps. Compared to Daydream, Samsung's controller has a much larger touchpad surface, not to mention one that's more clearly differentiated from the rest of the controller body, making it significantly easier to reach and feel for when you've got the headset strapped on your face. Samsung also introduces a new input lacking from Daydream, a trigger-style button located at the controller's front. Once paired with your phone, the controller shows up in the Gear VR interface as a fully rendered 3D version of the physical controller. Like with Daydream, Samsung also displays a helpful beam of light shining out of the tip of the rendered controller to assist you in correctly aiming it at virtual objects. Other aspects of the interface are similarly reminiscent of Daydream, like the ability to hold down one of those hardware buttons to recalibrate the controller should its motion system lose track of which way is forward. Like Daydream, there's a bit of drift now and then, but with the Gear VR we also saw a few big jumps in orientation, though again, nothing recalibration couldn't fix. Slightly more annoying were times when the system lost track of the controller altogether, though popping the batteries out and back in tended to solve that right quick. Speaking of batteries, unlike Daydream, which recharges over USB Type-C, Samsung's controller uses plain old regular AAA batteries. On one hand, that makes it convenient to just pop in a new pair and keep play going, but it does feel a little less refined than Google's effort. That trend continues when we look at how you're supposed to store your controller. Google built a little controller storage strap right into the flap protecting Daydream's lenses. Since Samsung is reusing last year's Gear VR headset, it can't do anything quite so graceful. It instead offers a little elastic band that slides over one of the Gear VR's head straps and allows you to securely attach the controller. It works, no question there, but like the battery issue, comes across as cheaper, less polished than Daydream. Okay, but what about actually using the controller? Well, right now there aren't a ton of Gear VR apps with native controller support. In the Oculus Gear VR shop, we counted just over 24 such titles, and only about a quarter of those are free, with the others tending to sell for around $3 to $10. At least, those are the apps listed in the formal Supports Wireless Motion Controller section, and we also spotted additional apps that very much recognize the controller, so the total number may be a bit higher. Just to what extent these apps take advantage of the controller varies, but all tend to tap into its abilities as a pointing device. Some recreate the Gear VR interface's way of rendering a 3D copy of the controller itself, while others replace that look with one more appropriate for that particular VR app in question, even changing the way the "you're pointing here" beam of light is displayed. Even if an app isn't custom coded to support the controller, the new accessory can still help enhance your Gear VR experience by no longer requiring you to reach up and touch the headset itself in order to interact with its controls. The back and home buttons, and even the touchpad, work on the controller just like they do on the Gear VR viewer itself, and you'll quickly appreciate how casually swiping around that touchpad with your thumb feels a whole lot more natural than reaching up and tapping on the side of your head. In a nutshell, the Gear VR controller is packed to the brim with potential, but as with so many new products whose usefulness depends on third-party software tapping into them, we're still waiting for that one killer app that's going to transform the controller from interesting new accessory to VR must-have.
Samsung's introduction of a wireless, motion-sensing Gear VR controller is an important one. It allows the company to maintain its top spot among companies offering virtual reality smartphone systems. But for now, we still need a lot more apps built to showcase what the controller hardware can do, and that situation's not going to change overnight. If you're buying a new Gear VR, when bundled with the controller, you'll be well equipped for when that day finally comes. And if you already have an existing Gear VR, the controller upgrade is only $40. Now, that's not a bad price, but you may want to hold off for just a bit until the app situation improves. At least that way you can feel a little more confident you're getting your money's worth. I'm Stephen Shank with Phone Arena. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any mobile tech coverage.